She was 19 and homeless. Not the kind of homeless people imagine from movies. There was no dramatic music, no sudden rescue, no place waiting for her, just cold mornings, aching feet, and the quiet embarrassment of pretending she wasn't sleeping in places meant for strangers. For nearly 2 months, Clara carried everything she owned inside a torn navy backpack: 2 sweaters, an old flashlight, a toothbrush, and a photograph she never showed anyone. Most nights she slept behind the bus station beside broken vending machines that hummed all night long. The city barely noticed her anymore. People looked through her instead of at her. Then one rainy afternoon, while hiding inside the public library to stay warm, Clara found something strange buried deep inside: an old county auction website, an abandoned music hall priced $4. The listing only showed 3 blurry photos: broken stage, collapsed seats, dust-covered chandeliers, condemned unsafe, no buyers. But what she didn't know was, hidden somewhere inside, that forgotten building was a balcony. Nobody had entered in over 50 years, and behind it, someone had left something waiting in silence. Something that would eventually force an entire town to remember what it tried to forget. Before we continue, if stories like this remind you that forgotten places sometimes carry forgotten people inside them, subscribe to the channel. And while you watch this story, think about the oldest memory you still carry quietly inside yourself. Because sometimes those memories survive longer than we expect. Clara grew up above a tiny tailor shop her grandparents owned near the edge of Bryan County. The shop smelled like fabric dust, warm irons, cedar drawers, and black coffee. Her grandfather Elias repaired old suits, by hand. Not quickly, carefully. He believed damaged things deserved patience. Every morning before sunrise, Clara would wake to the sound of scissors sliding across fabric downstairs. Snip, pause. Snip. That sound felt like home. Her grandmother Ruth embroidered initials onto coat sleeves beside the front window. She hummed old jazz songs while she worked. Sometimes customers paid late. Sometimes they never paid at all. But her grandparents still helped people. Everyone's carrying damage somewhere, Ruth used to say softly, "You mend what you can." Clara spent most of her childhood sitting beneath the cutting tables, drawing dresses onto scraps of paper. At night, Elias told stories about Bryan County before factories closed. Back then, the town had theaters, dance halls, parades, music, and at the center of everything stood Bellwether. Music Hall, a grand building with velvet curtains and gold-painted balconies where musicians once played for packed crowds every weekend. According to Elias, the entire town used to glow on concert nights. People wore polished shoes. Women curled their hair. Streetlights reflected across polished cars outside the hall. You could hear music 3 streets away, he said once with a smile. Clara loved those stories, especially because the town she knew felt nothing like that. Most stores sat empty. Now windows, boarded shut signs, faded sidewalks. Cracked Bellwether Hall closed decades earlier after a fire injured several performers backstage. Nobody talked much about the fire, only whispers afterward. The building stayed locked, forgotten, slowly rotting beside the river. When Clara turned 11, her grandfather became sick. His hands started trembling while sewing. Tiny mistakes appeared in places he normally stitched perfectly. One winter afternoon, Clara found him alone in the shop, staring at an unfinished coat with tears in his eyes. "I can't hold the needle steady anymore," he whispered. She didn't know what to say, so she sat beside him quietly. Sometimes silence is the only kindness people can offer. After Elias died the following spring, the tailor shop changed completely. Without his careful hands, customers stopped coming. Bills stacked higher. Arguments grew louder. Clara's mother worked double shifts at a diner trying to save the business, but exhaustion hollowed her out slowly. By 16, Clara had already learned how to sew hems, repair jackets, and patch torn fabric better than most adults. Not because she wanted to, because survival teaches skills quickly. The final years at the tailor shop felt heavy, quiet like a building, slowly losing air. Clara's mother stopped singing while she worked. Dust collected in corners they once cleaned daily, and every month more businesses disappeared from town. Then came the eviction notice. Clara remembered exactly how it looked, taped to the shop door. Bright white paper against faded blue paint. Cold official final. They lost the shop 2 months later. Most furniture was sold. Some things disappeared overnight. But Clara secretly kept one object before leaving her. Grandfather's small brass measuring compass. It fit perfectly inside her jacket pocket. She carried it everywhere afterward, even now. After losing the shop, her mother moved in with a boyfriend in another county. He didn't want Clara there. Long term. Arguments became constant about money, food, space, noise. Eventually, Clara stopped feeling welcome. One night after another fight, her mother said something quietly that hurt more than yelling ever could. "I don't know how to keep saving everyone anymore." Clara understood what she really meant. There was no room left for her, so she left before being officially asked to. At 19, she became invisible, almost overnight. She slept in laundromats sometimes because they stayed warm late. She learned which gas stations ignored people sitting too long near coffee machines. She learned how hunger changes. Time hours become slower, longer, heavier, and through all of it, she kept thinking about her grandfather's stories, especially Bellwether Music Hall, the place where the town once gathered before everything fell apart, a forgotten building full of music nobody remembered anymore. When she saw the auction listing inside the library, something deep inside her paused. Bellwether Hall, $4. She stared at the blurry photographs. For nearly 20 minutes, most people would have seen rubble. Clara saw shelter. Maybe purpose. Maybe one last chance to belong somewhere, even if the place itself had already been abandoned too. The bus dropped her near Briar River just before sunset. Bellwether Music Hall stood 3 blocks away. From a distance, the building looked enormous. Even damaged, it still carried pieces of its former beauty. Tall arched windows, stone columns, faded gold lettering above the entrance. Rainwater streaked down cracked walls. Weeds climbed the stairs. One chandelier still hung crooked behind the dusty front glass, like it refused to fall completely. Clara stood outside for a long time before unlocking the doors. The metal groaned loudly. Inside, silence swallowed her whole. Not ordinary silence, the kind found in places untouched for too long. Dust floated through weak afternoon light. Rows of broken theater seats stretched toward a collapsed stage curtain. The air smelled like wet wood, mildew, and old velvet. Somewhere deep inside the building, water dripped slowly. Clara tightened her jacket around herself. For a second, fear hit her hard. The building felt alive in a strange way, watching, listening. But she stepped inside anyway. Because lonely people sometimes trust abandoned places more than living ones. The first nights inside Bellwether Hall were difficult. Wind moved through broken windows, making soft whistling sounds after dark. Old pipes knocked randomly inside walls, and every sound echoed. Clara slept backstage beneath a faded curtain wrapped inside her coat. The stage still smelled faintly burned from the old fire decades earlier. One morning, while exploring the upper levels, she noticed something unusual. The main balcony curved across the theater beautifully, but the architecture didn't match the outside dimensions of the building. There should have been more space, a missing section. At first, she ignored it. Old buildings are strange sometimes. Still, the feeling stayed with her. Later that night, she heard faint piano notes, just 3 soft, distant. Clara froze instantly. The hall didn't even have electricity. She searched the entire lower floor with her flashlight. Nothing. No one. But near the grand staircase, she noticed fresh dust disturbed across the floor, as if something had been dragged recently. That made no sense. Nobody came here, right? Days passed slowly. Clara began cleaning sections of the hall to make them livable, sweeping dust, covering broken windows, repairing small tears in curtains using sewing techniques Elias taught her years earlier. The work calmed her. It reminded her of the tailor shop, repairing damaged things carefully. One afternoon, she discovered old posters stacked inside a storage room, concert advertisements from the 1950s jazz nights, piano recitals, traveling orchestras. But one poster stood out, a singer named Vivian Vale, final performance before Bellwether Fire. Someone had scratched her face out violently with black ink. Clara stared at it uneasily. Why, nearby, she found newspaper clippings mentioning the fire. Most articles blamed faulty wiring, but one sentence appeared repeatedly. Several areas of the upper balcony remained inaccessible after the incident. Upper balcony. Not the main one, another balcony. Hidden closed off that night. Clara couldn't sleep. Rain tapped softly against the roof while she replayed the strange piano notes inside her head, and sometime after midnight she heard them again. 3 notes. Same melody, somewhere above her. The next morning, Clara searched the upper theater levels carefully. Examined walls, measured distances, counted windows from outside. Something was definitely wrong. There was empty space hidden beyond the northern balcony wall, but no visible doorway existed. Then she noticed the curtains. One section near the balcony remained, strangely clean compared to everything else. Less dust, as if air moved behind it. Her pulse quickened. Clara pulled the heavy velvet curtain aside slowly. Behind it stood carved wooden panels, beautiful craftsmanship, and near the bottom, tiny scratches around one edge, a hidden door. She pressed carefully. Nothing happened. Locked. But now the mystery felt real. Not imagination, not exhaustion. Something had been sealed behind that wall intentionally. Over the next week, Clara became obsessed. She searched for mechanisms everywhere. Loose bricks, hidden switches, old maintenance rooms. During her search, she met a local elderly man named Bernard, who occasionally wandered near the hall feeding pigeons outside. When Clara asked about Bellwether, his face darkened immediately. That place should have stayed closed. Why? He hesitated. People blamed the fire on wiring, he said quietly. But not everyone believed that. What do you mean? Bernard looked toward the upper windows. There were rumors somebody hid something up there after the fire. Certain people searched the building for weeks. What kind of thing? But Bernard only shook his head slowly. Old towns bury truths when they become inconvenient. Then he walked away. That sentence stayed inside Clara's mind for days, especially after she found burn marks near the hidden wall, on the inside. Not outside, inside. The breakthrough happened during a storm. Wind slammed against the hall violently, while Clara searched backstage for dry blankets. That was when she found an old pulley system connected to decorative stage ropes. One rope felt tighter than the others. She pulled carefully. Somewhere above the balcony, metal clicked. Clara ran upstairs immediately. The hidden wooden panel had shifted slightly open. Cold, dusty air spilled outward, heart pounding. She forced the panel wider and stepped inside. A narrow hidden balcony stretched above the theater. Smaller than the main one, private, elegant, untouched for decades, dust covered everything in thick gray layers, and near the back wall sat an old, locked trunk. Beside a piano draped in cloth, Clara moved slowly through the darkness. Then her flashlight revealed something shocking. Inside the piano bench, stacks of bundled cash sealed inside waterproof wrapping, old jewelry boxes, gold watches, pearl necklaces, enough. Valuables to change someone's life completely. But beside them sat something even more important, a leather journal, and a folded handwritten letter addressed simply, "To whoever finds this after the music stops." The letter belonged to Vivian Vale, the singer from the posters, hands trembling. Clara read quietly while thunder shook the building outside. Vivian explained everything. The fire wasn't accidental. A powerful local businessman had been laundering stolen money through Bellwether Hall. For years, using fake performance accounts, Vivian discovered the truth accidentally. Before exposing him publicly, she hid evidence and valuables inside the secret balcony built originally for wealthy private guests decades earlier. But the fire happened. Before she could reveal everything, according to the journal, Vivian barely escaped alive, then disappeared. Nobody knew where she went afterward. The hidden valuables remained untouched all those years, waiting silently above the stage, above the forgotten music, above the town that buried the truth. Clara sat alone inside the dusty balcony for a long time, crying softly. Not because of the money, because for the first time in years, she felt connected to someone else who had been ignored, silenced. Forgotten. Authorities eventually became involved. Historians verified the journal, lawyers investigated old records, News spread quickly through Bryer County. The story shocked everyone, especially older residents who remembered Bellwether Hall before the fire. Some valuables were claimed legally by surviving relatives. Some became historical property. But Clara still received enough money to rebuild her life carefully. Not instantly. Slowly, she restored part of Bellwether Hall with community support. Local volunteers helped repair windows and clear debris. Bernard brought old photographs from the theater's glory days. A retired piano teacher donated sheet music, and Clara stitched new curtains herself by hand, exactly the way Elias taught her years earlier, one careful repair at a time. The building slowly breathed again. Music eventually returned too. Softly at first, a single piano performance, then small community concerts. People filled the seats again after decades of silence, and every time Clara stood near the restored balcony, she thought about hidden things, hidden pain, hidden kindness, hidden histories, waiting for someone patient enough to uncover them. Some places don't collapse because they're empty. They collapse because people stop listening to what lives inside. Then Bellwether Hall wasn't just hiding money, it was hiding memory, truth, and proof that forgotten people still leave echoes behind. Clara learned something important there. Being abandoned doesn't mean being worthless. Sometimes it simply means the world looked away too soon.